Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And folks, we were not expecting to be recording this pod, but here we are. We got an emergency show because Karl-Anthony Towns has been traded to the New York Knicks in exchange for Donte DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. The Timberwolves also get a top 13 protected first rounder in this deal, and somehow the Hornets got involved and they're going to get some draft compensation to make this whole thing happen. But Logan, a shocking moment less than a month before the start of the season. Tons to unpack here, but let's start with New York's side of this. Getting Karl-Anthony Towns, how does that change how you view them in that contending picture out east?
I mean, they've leveled up in the NBA arms race. We talk about this every offseason, Carson. You got to get better every offseason. You got to keep leveling up. This is a home run. Like, the Knicks GM might be akin to Prime Barry Bonds, man. I'd stop pitching to this guy. If he calls my phone, I'm just hanging up. Like, he is.
Big ups to Leon Rose, man. He's cooking.
He's crushed the past few off seasons. They get Jalen Brunson on an incredible value deal. They re-sign Julius Randle on a good deal. They make the trade for OG Anunoby midseason. They make the trade for Mikal Bridges. Like, he's crushing it. It's a huge get, man, especially with your concerns about Julius Randle, which I'll talk about later when we get onto the Minnesota side of things. But the Knicks really needed a reliable number 2 scorer after the last playoff run. There was an incredible burden on Jalen Brunson's shoulders to carry this offense. And Cat is one of the most reliable number 2s you can get, man. He's just got such a unique skill set at this size, being able to space the floor out at the center spot, being such a big guy. I think it's going to help their offense a lot. And, you know, I thought Bridges and Anunoby and Randle could all supplement this value. But having someone as dependable with such a unique skill set like Karl-Anthony Towns, it's just huge. And it's even better when you couple that with the fact that they lost Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency. They needed center depth. And with the fact that Mitchell Robinson now has an injury and is going to be out, like you needed – this was your most important position of need. I just can't believe it happened, Carson. I cannot believe that Karl-Anthony Towns was available. I can't believe that the Minnesota Timberwolves were willing to give him up. He is I was going to say this for later, but like Carson, I feel like, and maybe I'm a victim of this too to an extent, I feel like some people have underrated Karl-Anthony Towns to an extent because of how much they're blinded by like their hatred for Cat and how much they may dislike his personality. This is incredible value for New York. I cannot believe that they got him for Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. Like, it is an insane value deal for them. And I don't think enough people are understanding, like, how big of a get he is. This is Karl-Anthony Towns is a great player. Like, he is a huge step up to me from Randle. And, yeah, man, I think people are just underrating him maybe because they don't like him. They don't like his personality. The Knicks have crushed this offseason. This is another home run move in a series of home runs for the Knicks. I can't believe they landed him, man. I think it stamps them as – I already thought the Knicks were number 2 out east. When we did our Atlantic preview pod, I said that I thought the Knicks were the biggest threat already to the Boston Celtics. Now I don't think it's a question. Like, they have gone up another tier to me. It's Boston, and then it's New York, and then it's everybody else to me.
I love this for New York. I'm with you. This solidifies them as that second team, and I've been very high on the Knicks. And as you mentioned, it's hilarious because we already did our Atlantic Division preview for the season, so that is now null and void. The NBA, always unpredictable. But after we did that show and they announced the Mitchell Robinson injury, some of those concerns, some of those red flags really started to marinate in my mind, and I thought about how their outlook was so dire at the center spot without Mitchell Robinson out there. And could you rely on him to be healthy for the majority of a season and to play a heavy minutes load? The reality is we haven't seen that from him over the last few years. And then my other major concern, which has been the prevailing concern for me over the last couple years for the Knicks, is Julius Randle as the second option on a team that has legitimate title aspirations. I think with this move, they addressed both of those 2 major concerns, which were the only 2 major concerns about the Knicks as a title contender to me, with one move. Number 1, Randle being your second option. He is the single worst playoff performing star we have ever seen. You tweeted out yesterday he's got the worst true shooting percentage in the playoffs of any 15-point per game scorer since 2000. He's been the least efficient, 46% true shooting. He's got more turnovers for a game than he does assists. He's been a black hole. His jumper's gone ice cold. He's been disengaged defensively. He has just been a complete disaster. And like you say, people do not like Cat. And I understand people having their criticisms of how Cat has performed in the postseason overall, but I unequivocally trust him more in that role. Randle's jumper has just completely left him in the postseason, and he is an extremely hot and cold player. He has been hit with some untimely cold streaks, but they have just made him like damn near unplayable. I think Cat's elite shooting alone gives him a much steadier foundation as an offensive player. He's better for your spacing. He's better off ball, right? He's a lethal trailer in transition. You can have him curling around screens. He's very effective. He's a better roll man. He's a much more efficient post-up player, and he can have his issues with physicality, and this is something that I've harped on repeatedly with Cat, and something I would like to see him lean into more of those composed back-to-the-basket post-up possessions instead of trying to out-muscle somebody starting from the perimeter in an isolation closer to the three-point line, over dribbling. That's where he can get out of control. That's where he can turn the ball over, commit offensive fouls. When he just starts with his back to the basket, he's really been quite efficient. And when he just starts closer to the basket, and Randle has the ability to bully mismatches, but he's just always been prone to relying on that mid-range jumper that just wasn't good enough for him to be an offensive foundation. So Cat's bigger, he's more skilled, he's more efficient, he's held up better in the playoffs. The run that he just had is significantly better than anything that we've seen from Julius Randle on both sides of the ball in the postseason. And I still want him to be more consistent. I want him to be smarter. I want to see, as I mentioned, a better balance between those chaotic isolations and those more composed true post-ups. He kept the turnovers low in the playoffs last year. That was a positive. I want to see him maintain that. He's got to be smarter about fouling so he can just stay on the floor. He improved there last year, but he still has to get better. Like, control and IQ are the two key factors for Karl-Anthony Towns. But the ability's all there, and he is absolutely the second option that I am more confident in. We've seen him be probably the best player in a Game 7, a rock fight of a Game 7. He was not only playing his ass off defensively, but he was the most efficient, intentional offensive player in that game. We've seen him play multiple series of damn good playoff basketball. There's just a lot more there that I buy into with Cat compared to Randle. So that's major upgrade number one for one of your two key red flags. The other one is center depth. With Robinson out for a couple months to start the season, like, that just really made me reflect on how often he is unavailable and how rough the Knicks' outlook at center is without him. If it's Precious playing extended minutes at the 5, if it's trying to do small ball with Randle at the 5, like, those were not good options for the long term. And Cat obviously fixes that. And he can play the 4 or the 5, so you're more versatile. You addressed your two major concerns. You addressed a position of need. You added a better talent. Like, I just think it's a home run across the board for the Knicks. To me, this makes them the clear number 2 in the East, and it makes them a more legit title contender. And this is something that we've talked about in the past, like a specific trade like this, looking at how the Knicks could upgrade Julius Randle. If it was Lowry Markkanen, and I was like, yeah, that's a pipe dream. Cat, the contract is uglier, so, that makes him a little bit of an inferior asset. But still, it was like, I don't know, that's just too much of a talent upgrade. Why would the Timberwolves want to take on Julius Randle? Like, I did not think that you could trade Julius Randle, in really any combination, for a better basketball player at a position of need like this. Like, and that's why I was saying, I think the Knicks should hold off for this year and finish it out and see if Randle can somehow play better, just because I thought you need a legit second shot creator to still have that title window open now. I don't like Randle in that mold, but he is somebody who at his best can do that. And if you trade him, I just don't think you're getting comparable win now talent back. And I was wrong. The Knicks did it, and I think it's a home run. I'm so excited to see Cat in New York.
I mean, the Wolves got the bigger player, the better offensive player,
The
and
Knicks.
the better, the Knicks got the better offensive player, the better defensive player, and they got the bigger player. Like, I I completely agree with you. Like, that's why I was so shocked last night. I texted you, man. I thought I got hit with a flashbang. I just kind of stood
Yeah.
there with my mouth open, all slack jawed for the Timberwolves,
Hmm.
because I just thought Julius Randle's value was so low across the league. And a couple of things. One, I like how this changes the geometry for the Knicks. You think about how many clogged paints that Jalen Brunson was driving into last season. He's just got better floor spacing. Like, sure, this hinders the Knicks' depth a little bit, but I'm trading Donte DiVincenzo in a heartbeat if that means that I can go out and upgrade and get a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns. Like, again, man, if
Hmm.
you don't agree, I just think you're underrating how great Karl-Anthony Towns is as a player and what he can do for your team. He can rebound the ball at a high level. He showed in the playoffs last year that he can defend at a high level. Like, it wasn't the most consistent, but when he needed to, he was good on that side of the basketball. And I just think the offense is going to come so much easier, man. And I believe in the Knicks' culture and identity that they're going to be able to be really good defensively all around again this year. It's just what Tibbs teams do. And once Robinson comes back healthy, you now have a lineup with some really great versatility. You want to go jumbo sized against Boston? All right, let's put Mitch and let's put Cat out there. Okay, well, we need a little bit more floor spacing. We'll just have Cat out there. Like, it just gives you
Hmm.
so many different options, man. And I just think they got so much better. I don't know what the Timberwolves are doing. And you mentioned the contract. I get it. And we just had the new CBA come through, and I got to think that that has a
Yeah.
large component of it. But to me, Carson, guys are getting paid more and more every single year. And in a way, like the NFL, the NBA doesn't have real money. Like
Yes.
how the NFL manipulates the cap every year and how you can restructure contracts and how you can give out signing bonuses at this time of the year. And you know, it's not real. And so what I'm saying is that it's just dumb to give up the best player in a trade like this for cap purposes. Like next year, the cap's going to balloon again. We're going to get, we're always
Hmm.
eventually going to get the new TV contract. There's always going to be new money flowing in. The NBA that's true more so than for any other sport. Like with the NFL, you have so many players on a roster.
Right.
Quarterbacks are going to get all the money. Edge rushers are going to get all the money. Tackles are going to get all the money, right? Like, the best guys at their position are always going to get paid. But with the NBA, more so than any other sport, it spikes every year. A couple years ago, damn, I say a couple. I'm living in 2007, man. About a
Yeah.
decade ago, with Kevin Durant, right? We were all
Hmm.
sitting there with our mouths wide open. Oh, he's making $30 million a year. Now the best players are making 50, are making 60, and that's just the natural progression. Like, it's going to be soon where the best player in the league is making 70, is making 80, is making $100 million a year. Basically, I'm saying all of this to say Karl-Anthony Towns' contract may look like an albatross right now at $50 million a year.
Hmm.
Like any other bad contract in the NBA, in 2 or 3 years' time, it's not going to be that bad of value. You just pay the market value at the time that you pay the guy, right? It's like quarterback contracts. When you have to pay a star quarterback $40+ million, you're going to do it because that's what the market says. And I just think Karl-Anthony Towns, he may be slightly overpaid in a couple of years. That contract is not going to be that bad. And I think it's bad practice, Carson. Just to give up so much value. Again, like you said, man, I thought Julius Randle was a negative asset with his playoff track record, with the fact that he is still making $30 million a year. I'm saving my Julius Randle spiel for when we get to the Timberwolves, but
Hmm.
I don't think the contract point is enough of a justification to deal clearly the best player in the trade.
I'm with you, and we'll get to that on the Timberwolves side. On the Knicks side, though, is this contract worth it in a vacuum? No. And you mentioned, like, the cap is continually going up, right? Contracts are continually going up in terms of value. I still think that we will view Cat as being an overpaid player in a vacuum just based on his ability making $60 million in 2028. And I do want to be clear, the cap is real in the NBA with the new CBA. Like, it is. Teams are having to make harder decisions than they did previously, but I do think it's very different than what you see even in the NFL, right? Where yes, there are many ways to manipulate the cap in the NFL, but you simply have so many players on a roster that, like, you really do have to pick and choose. Okay, when are we going to pay this elite player versus when are we going to try to draft a guy who is much more win now ready than the equivalent NBA rookie would be, who we can get on a rookie controlled contract. Like, there's just so many more moving pieces with the NFL that you have to make more hard decisions like that. I'm not saying it's good to overpay in the NBA, but when you're close, right, when you are knocking on the door, sometimes you just have to, dude. And look at the recent champions, right? Boston gave Jaylen Brown the biggest contract in league history, okay? That is just objectively on its face an overpay. Didn't matter. They had to do it. Obviously, they had to keep their second best player, a key asset. They won the title this past year. The Nuggets gave Michael Porter Jr. $180 million. That was a few years ago, Logan, when that meant more. And that's still for him to be your fourth best player. That's what they gave him. But you had to keep the asset. He was too good of a fit, too good of a player to let him walk. You win the title. It's just something that these teams have to do in spots because you need the talent. You need the asset on your team. And the amount that my confidence in the Knicks increases going from Randle to Cat justifies that contract to me. And they have the pieces in place and under control, man. OG and Brunson, they have under control through 2028 with an option for 2029. They have Josh Hart through 2028. They have Mikal for 2 years. They have Mitch for 2 years. They have Deuce for a couple more years. So, like, those are all your core pieces. Tyler Kolek, I like. We'll throw him in there. He's on a rookie contract. You have him under control. Your window is now. And they've gone all in. They went all in with the Mikal trade, obviously. They went all in with the OG trade. They go all in now with Cat. They're not worried about draft picks in the future. They're not worried about maybe thinking that this contract is a bit of an overpay in a vacuum. They're saying, look, we can absorb that contract and still have all the key pieces around him and upgrade our talent now and make ourselves a more legitimate title threat. And I think that you do that 10 times out of 10 if you're the Knicks.
I completely agree, and that's also on the inverse of that. What makes the trade so puzzling to me for Minnesota is you are so close. You have everybody under control. You just got to the Western Conference Finals. Like, before they did this, during the regular season, I said that I thought maybe Karl-Anthony Towns was going to be the odd man out. And I talked to a lot of Timberwolves fans, and they told me the exact same thing. We gave up way too many assets for Rudy Gobert. If the cap becomes an issue, Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be the odd man out. And I thought for a while, okay, that makes sense. The Timberwolves aren't particularly close, right? They don't have a legitimate chance at winning the championship. That feeling went away for me in these playoffs when they took down the defending champion Denver Nuggets. When you saw this leap from Anthony Edwards through the first 2 playoff rounds, when Karl-Anthony Towns played his ass off through the first 2 rounds, when you saw how great this collective defense could be, I didn't think the Timberwolves were that far away, and they had their entire roster under contract. Again, it may handcuff you to not being super flexible, a couple of years from now. But like you said, Carson, the Celtics aren't very flexible with their cap situation, but they've got everybody locked down. I think the Timberwolves have taken a step backwards, and I don't take them as serious contenders anymore. And I'm sorry I'm going with this from the negative side. I still have more negative things to say about the Timberwolves, but I'm just so befuddled. I am so lost and dazed and confused about this trade, man.
I do want to address one more big question on the Knicks side before we move on to the Timberwolves. And this is the thing that I have seen be maybe the prevailing concern about Cat in New York is, can the Knicks hold up defensively with Cat in the lineup? Can they hold up specifically with him at center, which I think is the more interesting question? I think that they can. The Timberwolves last year, this is a cool stat, had a defensive rating of 108 with Cat on the floor and Gobert off. That 742 minutes of basketball. They were an elite defense with Cat on, Gobert off. That was the same as their defensive rating with Gobert on and Cat off. And I tweeted that out, and people were like, oh, there's a lot of context needed here, and Cat was playing with great perimeter personnel alongside him. But also, that was the point of my tweet. I said within the tweet, Cat has improved to the point where he is a capable enough defensive big that he can be the 5 in a lineup with great defensive personnel around him, and you can be a good defense. That's what we saw in that sample size last year. He is unequivocally a flawed defender. He's a mediocre rim protector. He's not somebody who I want switching, who I want guarding high-level perimeter players on isolations out in space. I think that he can struggle to be disciplined there. At times, he's just a bit uncoordinated out there. He's not the quickest moving in space. But he's an awesome post defender, which not the most valuable thing, but a skill set that was crucial for the Timberwolves in one very big matchup last year and is still a positive trait to have defensively. He's a damn good rebounder. He's pretty good at showing high in pick and roll and recovering to the roller, and he plays hard. And so I think if you put together those positive traits, you mix them in with the negative, his limitations, sometimes he just makes boneheaded plays defensively. You can't deny that. I'd say he's a slightly below average defensive big. And you don't want a slightly below average defensive center because it's the most important defensive position. However, if you put Mikal and OG, who I think are the best defensive wing tandem in basketball, you put Josh Hart, who I think is a positive defensively, alongside him with Tibbs, that coaching, that culture, the effort we know these dudes are going to play with, I think you'll be a good defense, probably like a fringe top 10 sort of defense. And what's been so perplexing to me is seeing everybody freak out about this as if Julius Randle wasn't clearly a worse defender. And I get the positional aspect of this. If you're thinking Cat is going to be our 5, that's just a more pivotal position defensively, but you can play him at both the 4 and the 5. Like, you have options there, and he just brings clearly more positive traits defensively than Randle. The specific matchup that I think is concerning for New York is going up against the Boston Celtics, how they hang defensively. But that was going to be problematic no matter what, right? Like, that's not some new issue that has emerged because you took on Karl-Anthony Towns. I think Julius Randle would only have been worse in that matchup. And the reason that I say that is that means that against the Celtics in your core lineup, you would have a slow-footed 4 out there in Randle who's not going to play with good effort. He's a liability. And you would have a center in Mitchell Robinson who's capable guarding in space, but nevertheless, if you're switching heavily, somebody who the Celtics might try to attack in space. And you would have a small point guard on the floor in Jalen Brunson, so you would have more exploitable pieces. With Cat at the 5, yes, obviously Mitchell Robinson is a better defensive center, but you can at least put your best athletes around Cat on the wings. You don't have to have this lumbering 4 as well. You can put your best perimeter defensive group around him. And I think that that is probably the best formula to dealing with the Celtics. Being able to switch 1 through 4 or 2 through 4, right? Just not having to hide as many pieces, having as many wing defenders you're confident in who can contain that dribble penetration. Of course, your rim protection is important, but the most devastating thing that the Celtics do isn't necessarily actually finishing at the rim. It's just creating penetration and then creating drive and kick look after drive and kick look. The way to contain that is you just have to have better perimeter defenders, and I think the Knicks can do that with Cat at the 5. And I do think that Cat will start at the 5 for most, if not all of this year, and they'll bring Mitch off the bench. I just think it makes sense to have 48 minutes of quality center play. Like, I think you can absolutely play them together for stretches, but Cat's obviously starting the year at center, right? Mitch isn't going to be out there, and I think that is probably their best configuration at the end of the day because of what it does for them offensively. I just think they can be an elite offense like that with all that shooting, with the shot creation of Brunson, with the play finishing of Towns, with the simple play finishing of OG and Mikal. Like, you think about what Brunson did offensively last year, still making this a top 5 unit, and they should absolutely be a better, more dynamic offense this year.
100%. That's what I was going to say is you can be mad about maybe the defensive ceiling that you give up, but I think it's offset by how much better your offense gets too. Collaterally, again, I talked about how clogged the Knicks offense was in the playoffs last year. Think about this, Karl-Anthony Towns stretching out the floor. That just opens up driving lanes for Brunson, for OG Anunoby, for Bridges. It opens up cuts on the backside, on the weak side of the floor. Like, and Cat's not a bad defender. He's better than Julius Randle.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. So much of this is reputational, dude.
It is.
It's
100%.
just like Cat was a highly regarded defensive prospect. He did not live up to it. People don't like him. And so they just say Cat sucks defensively. And again, he's a flawed defender. I would not want him to be my defensive center, but he's mediocre. Julius Randle is just a bad defender.
I completely agree. And the only other aspect of this that I might have a concern with for New York is Karl-Anthony Towns dealing with the media in New York. But honestly, I think Knicks fans are going to eat Karl-Anthony Towns up. I think they're going to embrace the kid. Like, I think
he's Dominican, bro.
I think they're going to love him. I think they're going to fall in love with Cat. Minnesota fans love him. I think New York fans are going to love him. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready to take a fat dump on the Timberwolves, though.
Yeah, we can get there. That is another thing, though, that I do think is important. I think that Knicks fans, as they've been good, have embraced whoever is the face of the team, and I think that they've embraced Julius Randle, but I do wonder how many Knicks fans have been able to have a hard look in the mirror now that it's like you don't have to talk yourself into him and say, okay, maybe it's nice to not have to bank on the dude who's been the worst playoff performer that we've seen. And also, Cat just has a better attitude, man. Like, people hate on him. They say that he's soft. I get it. He makes these mental errors. He plays hard. He keeps his head up. Julius Randle, man, is not malleable. I don't think he's somebody who puts the team first. He's somebody who hangs his head and pouts when things aren't going his way. Say what you want about Cat, that's not him. So I just think it's really an upgrade across the board for them. I do very quickly just want to talk about them giving up Donte DiVincenzo because I think that that's going to be painful for Knicks fans. White boy of the year. I've always loved Donte, man. You know, Logan, he was one of my 3 dudes in the 2018 draft. It was him, hit, Ant Simons, hit, Chandler Hutchison. We don't talk about that one, but 2 for 3 on the mid-late first rounders, not bad. I just think even though your depth is obviously taking a step back, like, you still have such a great group of wings starting. I like your guard depth with Deuce and Tyler Kolek. And again, there's just so many combinations of Hart, OG, and Mikal that you can play that, like, I think that they're fine. And I think that it's worth it to upgrade your high-end talent and your ceiling with Cat.
I was just going to say, I know Donte DiVincenzo played a massive, massive run in these last playoffs.
Yeah.
So many clutch three-pointers, so many big shots when you needed him. Exactly what you just said. I just don't think you need that as much now that you've gotten Mikal Bridges into the equation, right? You can let Deuce step up. I completely agree with that sentiment. Losing DiVincenzo sucks.
It does.
Especially for the Nova Knicks. Like, you know, you want to see that core all out there, but
R.I.P.
Yeah, short-lived, but you do this trade every single time. The Timberwolves are suckers, man. They're suckers. They're chumps. They're marks. They're bums.
Okay, do you have an updated prediction on the Knicks officially just because we did our episode?
What did I... Yeah, let me
I'm
see.
giving them one more win because Mitchell Robinson got hurt since we did our predictions, so I do think that that has an impact on their depth in the regular season. I have them winning 54 games and as my 2 seed, and I'm more confident in them definitely for the postseason now.
Yeah, I'll bump them up. I'll bump them up 2 wins to 54 wins. That sounds about right.
TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6. Whatever you call a touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL.
On the ground, in the air, from the special teams or the defense, we don't care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like picking a player to score a touchdown or how many TDs will be in a game. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick.
Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's talk about the Timberwolves side of this,
Please.
Logan. You've just been chomping at the bit over there to defecate all over Minnesota. Please, go ahead. Why do you dislike this so much for them?
So if I had to give the Knicks a grade on this, I'd give them an A-. For the Timberwolves, I'd give them a D-. They lost this trade. First, they gave up the best player in the trade, and like we've harped on, I think you can be critical of Cat, and maybe you've been disappointed in him, but I really think he showcased his ability in the 24 playoffs. 19-9-3 on 52-44 splits in the first 2 rounds. He was aggressive. He was mismatch attacking. He was hitting everything and playing good defense. I get that he was disappointing a little bit in the Western Conference Finals. The first 3 games, he's only given you 15 points per game, but he gave you 28 and 21 in 2 closeout games. Like, what I'm getting at here is he may have been disappointing for a brief stretch there, but this was the most impressive playoff run and the best that we've seen Cat in meaningful basketball games in his young career. I thought it was very, very encouraging. And he's just got such a rare skill set for a guy this size. Like, he's one of the greatest shooting big men ever. His career three-point percentage, 39.8%. It's the highest ever by a player 7 feet or taller. He's also got the fourth most three-pointers made by a player 7 feet or taller. It is just an absolute steal for New York. Again, you just made the Western Conference Finals with this core. You stand the best challenge to the Nuggets. It's a step backwards for the Wolves. And when we're looking at Julius Randle in this equation, I think that Julius Randle has good qualities. He's a big body power forward. He's a good positional rebounder. But I think a good nickname for Julius Randle, roller coaster. Roller coaster Julius Randle. The highs are going to be really, really high, but the lows are going to be really, really low. At his best, he's knocking down every pull-up jumper. He's grabbing hella boards. He's eating in transition. He's attacking mismatches at a high level, and he's playmaking. But at his worst, he is inconsistent. He's a shot chucker. He is a black hole on offense that'll take you out of rhythm. And as you mentioned earlier, he's disengaged defensively. I tweeted this stat out. He's the least efficient 15-point-per-game playoff scorer since 2000. 17 points per game on 46% true shooting. That's 34% from the field and 28% from deep. You look at the names that he's in company with when you look at that stat true shooting-wise, Dylan Brooks, Antoine Walker. Don't want to be there. He's got the lowest true shooting percentage. He's got the lowest field goal percentage, and he's got the 15th lowest three-point percentage of any 15-point-per-game score. So again, the names he's in company with efficiency-wise overall, Brooks and Walker. Carson, the names he's in efficiency-wise from behind the arc, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Good stuff.
We've seen Julius Randle in 2 different roles in the playoffs. We've seen him as Batman, we've seen him as Robin, and he's failed in both. I mean, again, the Knicks, the last time Julius Randle was healthy in the playoffs, the Knicks benched the guy. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to just completely bag on the guy, but peak for peak, he's not as good as Cat can be. He's not as reliable as Cat is. Cat is the better offensive and defensive player. Like, Cat is just better. The Timberwolves got worse. And, like, I saw some T-Wolves fans, God bless y'all, man. God bless y'all. I'm so sorry for y'all. Y'all have been tormented. Y'all have been beaten down. And now you got to deal with Julius Randle. I saw some Timberwolves fans trying to cope with the fact that they got the Detroit first-round pick. Whoop-de-doo, man. Y'all gave up the best player in the trade. And, like, again, I really legitimately considered the Timberwolves to be real deal championship contenders on their trajectory that they were on. They got Rob Dillingham in the draft. I thought that addressed a really big need that they had. Half-court offensive creation and legitimate bench creation. You have your entire team and core under contract for the foreseeable future. You had a formula and a recipe that worked, and more importantly, you have an ascending superstar in Anthony Edwards that if he hits his peak, his top 5 player peak that I think Ant is going to be one day, you're there. You don't have to make any moves. You're there as a contender competing for a title. They've gotten worse. I don't look at the Timberwolves as real deal contenders anymore.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed for Timberwolves fans, Carson. I'm heartbroken for them. They loved Cat. Like, you gave up an emotional leader and beacon of your franchise, but more importantly, you gave up the best player in this trade. I'm lost, man. I don't know what the Timberwolves were thinking with this one.
I don't like it for Minnesota. Here's what I think they were thinking, though. I think that they must have looked themselves in the mirror after how last year ended and taken a look at this roster and decided, we do not think that with this group we can win the title, paying Cat $50 million now, $60 million in a few years as the second option on this team if we want to win it all. And they thought long-term.
Do you agree with that sentiment?
I do not agree with that sentiment, and I do not agree with acting upon it now. I would have at least waited another year, seen how that gone, because they don't have the urgency. Like, the dudes who they want to pay, they still have under control. for this year. So no, I don't agree with that. But this is what I think they must have been thinking. And then they look at their long-term outlook. We want to pay Nas after this year. Maybe we want to pay Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And we want to be more flexible long-term around Ant. Julius Randle is only under contract for this year. Then he has a player option. It's roughly half the money per year. So you're absolutely cutting costs. But no, Logan, I don't agree with this line of thinking. And here's the thing. You were right there last year. If Ant and Cat just played better in games 1 and 2 of the Western Conference Finals, you could have been in the finals. And of course, I'm not saying that they deserved to, right? Dallas outplayed them in that series. I'm just saying everything around them went right. And those two didn't play up to their potential. And you can't just put that on Cat because Ant was honestly probably the more egregious of the letdown between the two. So you know that formula got you to the brink of what you're saying, okay, we can't achieve as currently constructed. And now you have downgraded talent. And here are your outcomes with Julius Randle, the star acquisition in this deal. You try to trade him, which I've seen some people speculate just because they do not like the fit for Randle in Minnesota. I don't think that's happening. I doubt this time, the second time that Julius Randle is being traded in one offseason, you'd get appropriate win now value back. That's option number one. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that it would make them as good a basketball team right now, even if they could trade him. You pay him, which means this entire rationale that we had to get off Cat, he wasn't somebody we thought we could commit that level of cap to. That doesn't hold water anymore because now you're going to commit to Julius Randle for longer than Cat. You're going to be signing the contract later at about $45 million a year if he gets the max, which I think he'll probably demand. Or option number 3 is Julius Randle walks, and now literally all you've done is trade Cat for cap space. And when you're as good as the Minnesota Timberwolves were last year, that is inexcusable. It just doesn't make sense to me. Your window is now. You had a damn good formula last year. Rudy Gobert is 32 years old. Mike Conley is about to be 37. So these are dudes who are only headed down from here, and they are key pieces of what you are doing right now, especially Gobert, obviously. He is your defensive anchor, and your defense is the heart and soul and strength of your team. So if you were going to trade Cat, I think you had to go back all in for at least one more year and then reevaluate. Say, okay, after another playoff run, do we think that Cat played well enough? Do we think that this offense is functional enough for us to be a title team? Do we think that it would just be more valuable to have more flexibility to upgrade the supporting cast talent? And if you came to that conclusion after one more year, okay, but we'll never know. I mean, they don't have another year. I just think it was hasty. I think it's a misstep. And it's been weird to see Minnesota, a team that, again, was knocking on the door of the NBA Finals last year, prioritize the future instead of the immediate window after they did like the ultimate win now move and traded everything away for Rudy Gobert. Now it's like they're sort of, I don't know if I want to say backtracking, but maybe hedging their bets a little bit, where they're like, okay, we want to be invested in both timelines because Ant is, yes, both a win now superstar, but also a young ascending player. Like picking Dillingham, right, would be another example of that. Trading up to get a dude who in the short term is not going to be an extremely valuable player to you. It's good to plan ahead. There's no question about that, but not at the expense of the immediate window. Because when you get overly confident in your ability to nail both, guess what? The reality is you just can't. And you're going to compromise one for the benefit of the other. I think their short-term title window is closed. Because you think about what their biggest relative strength was versus the rest of the league last year. It's their defense, of course. And they're still going to be an awesome defense. But it was specifically their ability to defend Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. You trade away a key component in that in Karl-Anthony Towns, who was an awesome post defender on Jokic last year, for a negative defensively in Julius Randle, who I trust less to be a committed member of a team defense. Like, that immediately knocks them down a peg in the picture out west. The biggest strength Minnesota had, arguably, was just, hey, we have the best formula to knock off Denver. And that was probably a bigger deal last year than it is going forward because Denver lost KCP, OKC got better. Like, Denver isn't clear top dog in the West the way that they were last year at all. I think OKC is top dog now on paper. But nevertheless, that was a very, very valuable punch to be able to throw. and they just gave up on it. And the Randle Gobert fit is bad. He's another dude who wants to play out of the mid post, wants to isolate in that area, right? I mean, a dude who is functionally a big forward offensively, but who's a far worse shooter than Cat. So your spacing is obviously taking a hit. Losing Cat's ability to just bang 40% of his threes, like, that was such a valuable path offensively for a Timberwolves team that wasn't oozing with offensive talent last year. Randall's just worse on both sides of the ball, and he brings value offensively. Of course, he's a damn good mismatch attacker. He has these stretches of good playmaking. He's a very good rebounder, but he's not someone I trust at all. He's a ball-stopping, low-efficiency player who's now being put in an offense that has desperately needed efficient offensive players, right? That has been their uphill battle to being a decent to good offense because of some of the spacing issues, because of the lack of shot creation around. And Cat could provide that. He could provide that efficiency. Randle cannot. And the ceiling with Cat on this team was just higher.
A couple other things, like the fact that Cat is such a rare talent in the sense that, like, Cat wanted to be in Minnesota too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Cat got along really, really well. It's rare to have guys in the modern NBA that want to be in one spot, that, and especially in a spot like Minnesota.
No hate, no hate.
Yeah, I mean, no hate, but, like, I mean, it's been hard for you guys
to hold on. It's not a big market, and it's not been a good franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it's been hard for you guys to hold on to superstars, and you have a guy that loves this city, that loves this franchise. Him and Ant get along really well. Also, not to mention that when you think about Ant and Cat and their skill sets, they complement each other so well. A big body, big man who can stretch out the floor and open up the paint a little bit. A guy that can collapse the hell out of the defense and get downhill and play make for him. Like, they just fit like a glove. And, I mean, Cat seemed shell-shocked by it, too. His tweet afterwards was just 3 dots. Like, I don't know if he knew about the trade before this news broke. And that's a big thing, Carson. I don't look at the Timberwolves as championship contenders anymore after this move. And you think about, I know we talked about this hypothetically during the playoff run. If the Timberwolves had gotten eliminated in that Game 7 versus the Denver Nuggets, I'm just left asking the question, do they do this trade? Because you think about all the takes after that sample size. The take was the Timberwolves are real deal contenders. They're like 1 season away. Cat and Ant both had superstar playoff runs. You had no questions about them. Like, I just wonder if they pull the trigger on this trade, if that's how they go out. I don't know, Carson. I can't find any logical reason to justify this for Minnesota. I'm so low on Julius Randle.
Yeah.
You've seen, and you mentioned the 2 timeline things. It's like, history has shown us that that's not going to pay off. That you capitalize on the window that you have and you push all your chips in the middle of the table. Scare money doesn't make any money. And if you're scared about the contracts, like, I just think you've screwed yourself. I don't know, man. I can't figure this one out, Carson. I can't find any reason why this makes sense. Would the Timberwolves get eliminated in the first round? The Timberwolves get eliminated in the second round? I don't see how you get to the conference finals. I don't see how you get back to the finals. I mean, I think Cat was ascending, man. I think Cat had even more room to get better and to show you more that he could do in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed, man. I'm just saddened. I'm saddened for Timberwolves fans.
Here's one more component in this, Logan, that I don't want to understate. It took Cat and Gobert a year. It took the whole Timberwolves a year to figure out how to play with that configuration, right? The 2023 season was just a complete disappointment. And although it's not like you're asking a center to play with another center again, as it was with Cat and Gobert, like, the fit is going to be clunky with Randle and Gobert. And I think that there is going to be an adjustment period there. It might be a full year of an adjustment period, and then Randle's contract is up. You have to pay him. Like, you just had a very good thing going. And I think the notion that we are going to replace a key component in that who had figured things out in this situation with an inferior player who now has to try to figure things out in a weird I'd say objectively bad fit. I just don't see it, man. I do think that they closed their title window in the short term. They're still going to be really good. And the win for them in this trade is picking up Donte DiVincenzo because I think that their bench looks really good. He brings back some shooting they desperately needed losing Cat. He's athletic. He'll play with effort defensively. And I think it's just good for them to have an option on the wings who can rain threes. You have your awesome perimeter defenders in Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but neither of those guys are super high volume three-point shooters. They're both liable to have their cold stretches. Like, Donte is a weapon. So that's nice. He gives you a little bit more versatility in terms of your options there. But I do think Cat, with what he brought defensively, with the spacing that he could provide in this too big look offensively, RIP to the Cat Gobert pick and roll, man. I mean, that was a extremely effective action. They generated 1.4 points per possession out of Cat Rudy pick and roll in the playoffs. Like, he's just a unique talent, man. That shooting is special, the passing at that size, the ability to post up, the ability to isolate, the ability to score in transition as a roller. Just a better all-around basketball player than Julius
his most
Randle.
valuable trait is he can just stand somewhere, catch it in fire. Nobody can contest his jumper. He's going to hit it at a 40% clip. When he's hot, he can be damn near 50. He's a weapon. It's one of the most valuable traits and skill sets in basketball. Like,
I agree.
I don't have any new stuff to say, man. I think Cat's underrated. I think this is a really dumb freaking move by the Timberwolves. You've never been competitive in your franchise's history, man. Like, legitimately, you're on the cusp. You're right there. And you sold the farm. You sold the farm, man.
Where do you think they factor into that hierarchy out west now?
They're not real. Like, to me, it's
Damn.
Denver and OKC. I think they are the front top dogs out west.
Yep.
You've moved yourself into the Phoenix Lakers tier.
You think they're down there?
Yes. It's a
So you have Dallas above them? I would have Dallas above them.
Probably. Dallas has something that they do at an elite level. They've got the best superstar in the equation with Luka Doncic. They're going to be able to shoot the hell out of the ball with him and Kyrie. Like, Dallas is just going to be able to more seamlessly create easy offense. The Timberwolves aren't. You have also sold your best quality, which was your defensive ceiling with this group. Your jumbo-sized lineup that can out-rebound and out-physical teams. I want to throttle Tim Connolly, man.
I will say, listen, Randle is still very big for a 4. He's an elite rebounder for a 4. He plays more actual bully ball than Cat offensively, just in terms of being a more physical mismatch attacker. But here's the thing, like, Cat was still more effective as a post-up player last year, more efficient. And Randle's not bringing you anything that Cat doesn't outside of, a little bit of ball handling, a little bit of playmaking. You're just meaningfully losing out in some categories.
I was just going to say, Minnesota, if your front office, if you guys need to, like, tie Tim Connolly down to a chair or something before you guys sign off on deals.
Hello.
Me and Carson, we will offer our services, man. We can be like
tie him up?
Well, here's the thing. We'll tie him up to the chair, and we'll be like the final consultants before you hit the buzzer, man, before you make the move. We can be like, I don't get it, man. I think this is like a Ratatouille situation, man. I think there's like a rat in Tim Connolly's hat or something like that, pulling his hair and making these trades.
It's a good theory.
I just can't think with his track record and how successful he's been, all these great decisions he's made as a general manager, that he would go through with this deal, that he would be the guy that made this kind of organizational and fundamental misstep.
I think it just comes down to a lack of faith in Cat in that number 2 role. I think that must be what guided this decision. We'll see if that proves to be a good line of thinking. Like, I do think there are questions about Cat as a number 2 on a title team, but I think there are way more questions with Julius Randle, and that current window for the Timberwolves is just very, very valuable. You don't maintain these windows as a damn good team for that long, and they're going to have a prolonged shot at it because of Anthony Edwards, but this specific core, man, was really damn good, and I do think it's a bummer to see them broken up. All right. Appreciate you guys tuning in. What an incredibly exciting little piece of news we got. We will be back tomorrow night talking NFL football, so stay locked in for that. We also just previewed the Southeast Division in the NBA yesterday, so you can check out that show on YouTube or across all audio platforms where you can find all of our full episodes. You can check us out on social media, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, all of our short-form trivia content. And you can join our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bio. So with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.